if it does replace the Rebirth map, if it does replace quote-unquote Alcatraz, what do you think this means for the Rebirth community and maybe even the competitive community as a whole as we kind of like bide our time for Warzone 2?
This is a safe space to be myself, right?
Oh yeah, you can
Absolutely.
say whatever you want. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome into another Bot Lobby podcast episode. I'm Grandmaster Gojj, joined by my wonderful co-host Katie Bedford over here on the side, and today, yet again, we have another very special guest. Now, we took a little bit of a break last week because not a lot was going on, but Modern Warfare 2, a lot of leaks, a lot of information, not even really leaks, promo information about Warzone has been dropped, and we wanted to talk about that. So we had this guest looming in the background of like, let's bring this guy on. He knows everything there is to know about the new Warzone map and Warzone 2, but something else came out of the blue we didn't even know about, Katie. Fortune's Keep, like literally one tiny leak that it didn't catch wind, no virality at all with it, like craziest thing ever, and then all of a sudden it's getting dropped. We had this really cool puzzle today we'll talk about, and so what better guest to bring on than Modern Warzone himself. Now, a little bit of background. Modern Warzone and I have known each other for a very long time. I've known Doug since he was in, his name's not Doug, by the way, but I've known Doug since he was at 15,000 followers or so, now casually sitting at 600,000 followers, covering everything Warzone, everything Call of Duty, and it is my just absolute pleasure to bring on one of my very good friends in the space, Mr. Doug Dagnabbit, Mr. Ricky, Mr. Modern Warzone. Let's bring him in. There he is, and I'll take the map off the screen so we can get his beautiful face. Doug, how are you doing today?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you so much for having me on. You threw a little bit too much gas on me. I think my head might explode, but I do appreciate it.
Well deserved.
Really enjoy the podcast you guys have been putting out. You guys do a good job of, trying to dive deep. It's a good thing. We need more discussion and stuff like this. And I think we're going to have a good, healthy discussion about our thoughts about this map and everything I learned while I was in Los Angeles.
Yeah, that's
you had that whole trip. It's always fun to watch kind of the Twitter sphere get worked up when they find out that people are being flown out for something or going out for something. And obviously it's a lot of fun, I know, for people like yourself to kind of tease out everything that you were able to talk about from those trips. So I know they probably had a lot of goodies to show, and obviously as well what Gojj teased Fortune's Keep dropping. There's just a lot, and it's really exciting to see kind of this much content and activity when we're in what could be a coast and sort of blah time period.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that this caught a lot of people off guard. I've known about it for a few weeks now, and actually while I was in LA, we were talking about this new map, and I think that I think this is one of the occasions where I kind of realized like how leaks can be harmful, because the way it was presented today, it's been okay. And like Gojj said in the beginning, like this was obvious. We tweeted about, me and Charlie Intel covered it yesterday. Fortune's Keep is a new map coming in season 4, but it didn't go viral at all. Almost like it seemed like nobody noticed or cared. And now we got the map today, and I think if this would have been leaked, like, just a tweet that would have said Rebirth Island is being taken out for this new map or whatever. I mean, that's not confirmed yet, but it seems highly likely that the internet and Twitter sphere would have gone crazy. But since marketing was allowed to do what they do, it actually went well. I think that the overall reaction that I've seen so far on the timeline is everybody's willing to give this map a chance. There's some concerns, but at the same time, they're not just downright shitting on it.
Yeah, well, I will say
that's always a dub.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is one of the more positive reactions. Now, we don't have a lot yet. We have the map, which is a lot, quote unquote, but we don't know a lot about the actual scale. Like, we were talking about this beforehand, Doug, and I want to get to the Warzone 2 stuff later, because this is, first and foremost present. It just happened today as of recording and as of our live episode. All of these puzzle pieces came in that you were covering, and I'm gonna show the map on our screen right now. I'm gonna move Doug's face over so that you guys can still see it, but here's the current map. You can kind of zoom in on Twitch if you're there. If not, you guys can find it on Twitter. Doug has tweeted every single puzzle piece and the overall map. They provided a scale, Doug, and I know you were doing this a little bit before on your stream. We're not really sure how big this map is. The general consensus is that, and this is all like alleged, this isn't 100% confirmed, but the idea is like, oh, they're going to delete Rebirth Island and they're going to put this Fortune's Keep map in its stead. But as we got looking at the scale, I'm not sure if that's the case or not.
Yeah, I think that it's still something that's up for debate. They haven't really given us much information at all about it, and it's kind of really hard to determine off the scale, because I even went into a Warzone game to check, and the Rebirth Island scale right now is different than the scale for this map.
Oh,
And
really?
yeah, this map is 1 inch to 500 feet. And the Caldera map is done that every inch is 1/8 of a mile, which is totally different number. And then you have the current Rebirth map. I don't even remember what it said. It was like 1 inch equals or a unit equals 50 feet. So they're all way different. Somebody's going to get it exactly right. I saw J God did one that I think he thinks is right, but I'm not exactly
I want it to be right. I want it to be right because if it is, I know you have it up on screen,
Yeah.
Gojj. If that's accurate, that's such a mind fuck because you look at it, you're like, that doesn't look that big. But wait, if Rebirth that small, like I just really want that to be true.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to let the people who are in the Twitter space know, we are on Twitch right now on twitch.tv/Grandmaster Gojj with better audio and video quality than you'll get off of the Twitter space. You guys should stop by. Make sure to drop this podcast to follow. They do a lot of good work for the Warzone community.
Wow, the best guest we've ever had. I can clearly say it
best
already.
guest.
Plugging the Twitch before we even are halfway through the episode. You're the goat, my friend. I appreciate that. No, this podcast has been a ton of fun. You know, one of the things we really focus on, Katie, with the podcast is, of course, Warzone and the competitive scene. Let's talk, Doug, like, in your opinion, with all of the releases that we've had thus far, like, what do you think about, like, if it does replace the Rebirth map, if it does replace, quote-unquote, Alcatraz, right? Like, if this is the map to replace, and even if it is like a similar scale and size, what do you think this means for the Rebirth community and maybe even the competitive community as a whole as we kind of, like, bide our time for Warzone 2?
This is a safe space to be myself, right?
Oh yeah, you can say whatever you want. This is all you.
This is me. Get the fuck over it. You guys have had Alcatraz since Blackout. Alcatraz was originally done with a zombies map way back in the day. I think it was called Blood of the Dead. Or Mob of the Dead, whichever. Look, it was an okay map. It had a lot of flaws, and this map is built off of everything they've learned about it over the past couple of years. So please just be open-minded, give it a shot. To me, so far, it looks like the only area of concern people have is the size scaling and regain opportunities, which is going to be amazing, and the overall player count. I think that if they did anything with the player count, that maybe up it by 20 to 80, because it looks like there's a lot of regain opportunity here. But at the same time, once you're in one of the POIs, you're going to be doing a lot of infighting with people close by, like Town, Gate, everything except for the Winery, Lighthouse, and Smuggler's Cove. Looks like it's going to be regain central because teams are going to be trading kills left and right. And I think that the overall change here is to incentivize a better pace of play and a bit less hand-holding, because it looks like almost any rotation through mid-map is going to be like rotating in front of living quarters in the current Rebirth meta, which is just scary. Like having to rotate through tents is just a scary thing, and that's a good thing. It makes the high ground a bit more dangerous because you'll have to go down through there, and it makes the low ground worth looking at and thinking about. One thing that you guys can point out if you want to cover the map with my face, I did find the balloon spots.
Oh,
There's balloon spots that you can see.
Love that.
And I believe I found 4 balloon spots. There's one over here on the far left of the map where you see like a mouth with the danger zone. So there's one right below the northernmost building right there with the little red on the edge. You can see a square with a red dot. There's one right beneath camp. There's one right beneath camp that is pretty easy to see. And there's one up by the bay. And when we super zoomed into Grotto, I think that we could see one there. So a total of 4 balloon spots that we can see so far. And it seems like there's 3 on the outer edges of the map. There's none at the keep because it looks like the keep is the highest vertical point of the map, so you can just parachute from there.
Yep.
And the grotto has one because it's like it's clearly sunken in, kind of like the hole at peak right now. So there has to be an escape option there. I think that'll probably come out underneath into Smuggler's Cove, and that people haven't noticed that yet. But that's going to be a good rotation opportunity. But every balloon that I've noticed that has been there so far is in a good spot on the outer edge of the map, to where it still allows you to go land there and then get right into the thick of it after you've gotten your loadout.
Yeah, and if you're watching on the Twitch, I mean, you guys can look at it yourself if you pull up the map. Call of Duty tweeted it out. Modern Warzone on Twitter has tweeted it out as well. And you can't really see it unless you get really close. You can see these little red dots that are over these squares, and that is denoting the balloons that Doug is talking about. A great shout out. The easiest one to see is definitely right below camp. There's a whole little like launch pad from it. So good to know. And I also think you're right, Doug. Like, as you look at this map, keep is going to be the high ground. It looks like it almost will slope sort of all gradually down towards, of course, sea level, which is Smuggler's Cove, down at the bottom mid. I'll be curious to see how that looks. Now, I am getting word JGod did tweet out a potential brand new scale based on better looks. So let me pull that up really quick and see. Okay. The math seems to check out. This might be closer. He measured something wrong. This might be closer. Still much bigger.
There we go.
Still much bigger.
Yeah, definitely much bigger, but that's more reasonable to my brain to look at.
20%. About 20% larger it looks, which makes sense. Lines up. That's what I was told it would be.
Yeah, this makes a lot more sense. So let's talk about scale. Let's talk about size. Doug, in your opinion, do you think they're gonna, if this were to replace Rebirth and not just be a different mode in particular, like, do you think the player count's going to be different, or do you think they just made it bigger so that the games last a little bit longer? There's more chance for regain.
I honestly am not positive yet. I think that they might up it by 20, and that would make sense if it's a 20% map size increase.
Sure. Yeah. That could certainly be an interesting kind of use case.
80-person Rebirth.
Yeah,
just right in that middle ground.
It would be interesting to see how that plays out as well, pacing along the map. What Gojj was mentioning, the duration of the games themselves, the capacity, if it's 20% bigger, but maybe there is a bigger player count, how that does affect the ability to regain. I'm really curious. And not just because I enjoy wine, but to see kind of the to a little bit to the east of the winery, where you actually would presumably have what looks like where the vines and the plants would be, how that's going to look terrain wise, and if there's any cover there, kind of what might start happening on some of those end circles toward the east side of the map could be really interesting, depending on how that all paces out, as well as since it kind of looks, as you guys have been saying, all sloping downward from that primary keep point. It'll be curious to see that side of the map, how that plays out.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. In terms of the general promo, I mean, Doug, you've seen a lot of different promotions from Call of Duty with the way they announced new content. I mean, what do you think about the way they did this one with the puzzle pieces, etc., about releasing this? Of course, like it not being leaked was a huge boon to the overall like hype that we're building around this. But
yes,
talk to me a little bit about the way they released it.
I thought it went okay. I do think the cake thing's kind of goofy, but then once I realized that they all had high resolution photos to share right after, I was kind of like felt a little bit better about it, because I was just imagining everybody like cropping out the picture from the cake, and it's super soft, and then combining all those together. But I think it turned out okay. I think it did exactly what they wanted it to do. They had the one tweet where they said it had to reach 500 replies, which required community involvement in a positive way from Twitter, which doesn't happen with their main accounts a lot. And I think that I haven't checked yet to see if they got the hashtags trending. I do believe the hashtags were Warzone Resurgence and Fortune's Keep. But I do know that I really think that that's smart of them. It made people like me not be able to just tweet out the map all at once, and to have to actually like have a thread for it that I use the hashtag in every time, just because that's smarter. And I think that it was a better marketed thing than they've had before. And clearly, since it didn't leak, pretty well done.
Yeah,
I mean, really, Gojj, there's nothing like, we were talking about it a little bit before we officially started, but stuff like this can be so sometimes impossible to keep under wraps, and the fact that you can, and then you can execute in that way and get people like Modern Warzone to engage with it on multiple levels on social media by giving out the puzzle pieces. It's also, I mean, I just think stuff like that's sort of fun.
Yeah,
at the end of the day, it's fun to have things be teased out to get the final picture. So I do like that this was presented in this way and wasn't maybe leaked out earlier.
Yeah, I've just pulled up another. We're gonna have these all day, by the way. Like, this is all brand new info. Like, it just got finished. The map got finished about an hour ago or so. I mean, this is another chance at the overall scale. This one looks a little bit more similar to size of Rebirth Island. You can see it on your screen right now. The white, of course, is Rebirth, and so this is maybe a little less than 20% larger. I'm not gonna do the math. You guys can do that later, but you can see still a player increase here, even if this is the actual scale to the map. I will say, if this is accurate or the last one is accurate, which it seems like that is probably going to be the case, this continues to further the idea that is still allegedly true, but not necessarily true, that Rebirth will completely go away, and this will be the replacement for it. Doug, in your opinion, with how long we have to wait still until Modern Warfare 2, which is in late October, and then potentially with Warzone 2, which we're going to talk about being at the very end of the year in December. Do you think when we do get this map, which is, I believe, allegedly going to be the next season, season 4, do you think that season 5 leading into Modern Warfare 2, we will see this map continue into Warzone 2 as well? Or will this just be like a filler time until Warzone 2?
This is a good question. You know how to ask the right questions. I don't think it'll be there. I saw a couple people tweeting about it earlier, but based on what they said in LA to us and the way they've described Warzone 2, is this a completely separate thing. Like, I don't think anything is coming. The only thing I think that you're going to get from this Warzone we currently have is you're going to get your COD points. I think that's it. I don't think that even if this map goes extremely well, I think that Warzone 2 has its own plans.
I don't mind that, Gojj. I mean, what's your opinion on that? Do you feel like you want to see things like this continue on, or do you enjoy the fact that it's going to be like, this is here, this is the now, but just wait until everything else that's coming?
There's no question in my mind that we need to move on from Rebirth Island. Like, this map has been here for so long, like 2 years almost.
Two games.
It's insane that it's been here this long. So it's a good thing that we're replacing it theoretically. If it doesn't replace it, I'll be surprised. But all of that to say, it's funny. They did say like nothing will carry over to Warzone 2. I'm just surprised that they spent the dev time to create a whole brand new map with theoretically some brand new content even coming with it potentially down the line leading up to Modern Warfare 2. And then they just scrap it after not even 6 months. I mean, a little less than 6 months of this map even being available to play. Like, that's more akin to like an elongated limited time game mode. Like, that's what confuses me a little bit about the release time. This would have made a little bit more sense if it was like a month and a half after Caldera.
Yeah, I just based on what I know, I think that this has been in development for a while. And then after the Vanguard sales numbers were bad and all that stuff, Caldera didn't launch well. Now we have Modern Warfare coming out in October, which the original one came out in October as well. Is just make people as happy as we can with what we got right now. And I would just say, don't expect shit to happen to Warzone 1 after we move to Warzone 2. They may take care of it and make sure you can still play it. Emphasis is completely moving to the new era, a COD 2.0. So I think that this was kind of like a last hurrah. And you guys mentioned that Season 5 will be going into Modern Warfare 2. It hasn't been officially confirmed, but it should be obvious based on the dates we're working with and when this next game comes out and how early it was revealed that Season 5 will be the last. That's just my educated guess about it. So I think that this was like, hey, we were working on great content. Here you go. Hopefully this increases community morale moving into Warzone 2.
Well, that is how I am trying to look at it, is even if it was in development for a while, maybe things weren't executed in Fortune's Keep the way it was planned out from inception. The fact that we're getting content like this, like an entirely new map, even if we're closing on quickly, Warzone 2, new game, etc. We've talked so much about this coasting period and why it can be dangerous, especially when it comes to things like Warzone and people maybe losing interest. When you bring in things like this, even if it's only for a little bit of time, at least to me, it signals the care level that's going into it. It's not just, we're gonna see what happens, hope people stick around till Warzone 2, and then bang, it's gonna be... I'm actually really pleasantly surprised by the amount of content and updates that we have received in kind of this awkward time that's not, really the beginning of Caldera anymore, and very much so getting toward the end of the lifespan. I like it a lot.
Yeah, and it's honestly crazy because nobody would have guessed this, Like, it was hard to keep this one internal because... I mean, this just came out of the blue, and I don't know, like I said, if this would have been leaked, it would have been the end of the world. But since it came out in their time span and when they wanted it to, and we're only supposedly 1 week away, it's not that bad. People get a bit of time to consider the map. They get to market it well. People get to spend their last week on Rebirth if it's really gone. It's not just like a cash, I don't know, like Caldera kind of felt like a cash grab for the pre-order of Vanguard. You got to play it a day early and all that. This is like a fan service type thing, like I think you're saying, and just to keep And especially something that people undervalue is basically my entire job is to keep conversation going about
Right.
Call of Duty. And this definitely keeps Call of Duty in the limelight while there isn't a lot of interesting things happening in gaming. It was unexpected. It's good PR for them. And it'll probably be the last big hoorah. I mean, we also were told that Caldera should have one of his biggest changes ever in season 4, and we still haven't heard a
Ooh.
word about that. So
That's what, like three weeks away or something like that.
I think it's only
2 weeks away.
What's today's date?
13th.
13th.
I think it's about 10 days away.
Oh
Ooh
gosh,
la la.
time moves so fast around.
I know
this part.
that's genuinely very weird to think about. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I know, and it's very easy to have this reaction. I fall into this trap. I know a lot of people do too. That when you see something like this, change makes people anxious, and immediately a lot of the takes can be negative because you're worried about what you like, and will what you like not be included in this, and whatever it may be. So I would at least encourage people, when you're looking at this, be happy that we're receiving content like this, and try and look for the things that you're excited about with it, because it can be really tough to get away from the mindset of, but I want Rebirth Island, I don't want anything to change, screw this, even though they're giving me new content when they don't have to.
Yeah, I mean, come on. Like, we've had, like Doug says before, we've had Rebirth forever, and it hasn't hardly changed except for balloons most recently, I guess, in those kind of, like, not even buy stations, whatever they're called, those little armory deposit things. But you know, I am curious to see if this will stay. I think Doug is right. I don't think it'll carry over to Warzone 2, which means we have it for like 6 months, 7-8 months at the most, which is super curious. But hey, it's content. Content is great, especially in downtime. So I'm glad we're talking about it. I saw an interesting question from a couple other people, and I am getting confirmation, Doug, you're right. 23rd, so 10 days is season 3. Or 4, sorry.
Saying. I think it's the 22nd, but that's what Ghost of Hope is saying. Because usually Vanguard season launches one day before, or whatever, how they do it.
Yep.
So that's why he's going off of that. But I do think it's the 22nd. We'll see, though.
Yeah, and I don't think it's official yet, but theoretically, if this map were to drop soon, then we would assume it drops for season 4, which is then 10 days from now. So you could theoretically be dropping into Fortune's Keep in 10 days, which is actually kind of insane. Maybe 9. Who knows if Doug is right. Yeah, it's certainly exciting, and I'm glad we have it. I'll be... I think from the competitive side, Katie, because this is something we focus on, you're going to see a couple like of these Rebirth tournaments pop up, like last chance Rebirth tournament, like last time playing on Rebirth. And then
absolutely.
I do think, because unless they come out with something drastic for Caldera, and we'll hit that point and then we'll go to Warzone 2, I think you will see the kind of finale of Warzone 1, if we can call it that, competitive scene on this map. Caldera has gotten increasingly stale for a lot of our pro/competitors that we talk about all the time. You see wagers going on all the time. You see the tournament production company /Activision themselves back up from large-scale events, and their focus has been on Rebirth since CDLR and everything else they've been doing, all of their major events. I mean, we did Battle of the Titans together, Katie. That was a 35K tournament on the limited time game mode on Caldera. We played Rebirth almost the entirety of that tournament, of that event, right? And so this, I think, is going to be their focus from the back end side, but this is also probably going to be the focus from the competitive side leading up to Warzone 2 and Modern Warfare 2. So Doug, talk to me a little bit, if you can, anything that you know about the kind of quote unquote big changes that could be coming to Caldera to try to bring some more light to that map.
Actually have no idea. This is not me capping for the I have no clue. I knew about this Fortune's Keep thing being a huge part, but I don't know. I really don't. Maybe they got comms crossed up and we're not getting that much more for Caldera, but I do believe we will. I have no idea what it'll be. I know that my headcanon was always the volcano will go off, and whenever the first day that I opened up Warzone, I was like, or new Caldera map, one of the first calling cards I unlocked was literally the volcano exploding in the background.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, it's for sure happening. So I think it'll be kind of something like that. But what we haven't spoke about yet is this transition for Rebirth. And we're all it's gonna be a weird phase where we're all gonna still say Rebirth when really we mean Resurgence.
Yep.
So we're gonna be transitioning to this new map supposedly, and it's gonna be interesting to see how that's done, because if you actually go and look at the playlist updates that Raven Software shared back whenever Season 3 Reloaded came out, the last playlist update is slated for the 22nd, and the Rebirth Island is at the very bottom of it, and it's redacted, like they have white across it. So maybe we get like another nuke event or something like that. I don't know.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
I don't know what they're gonna do with it. If it's leaving, it has to have fanfare, though.
yeah,
You know?
yeah. I mean, it's been such a staple in the community for so long, and especially more
Mhm.
recently with, I mean, like even if we start looking at YouTube views and stuff, like it's all rebirth, 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 rebirth. So, yeah, that is curious. I mean, Katie, what do you think about a live event for the if we lose rebirth? I mean, I think
Mhm.
Doug is right. If we lose it, it's gonna have to be some big event with how important it is to the scene.
I am a huge proponent of live events. I've experienced a number of them over the years in a variety of different games, from MMOs, obviously, to games like Call of Duty. And I think kind of that fan service send-offs like that, it generates a lot of interest on social media, but it gets everyone, and sometimes even people who maybe haven't been on the game in a while, to potentially come back
Yeah.
and want to engage with this and want to be in the game and kind of experience what's happening with these live events. So if they do something like that, I think it'd be great. But Gojj, to kind of touch back on what you said about the competitive aspect of things, I wonder if we'll get in a smattering of kind of additional Fortune's Keep specific tournaments that Activision is going to want to have.
Sure.
I wouldn't be surprised if potentially they go to TOs and they say specifically, we want whatever, it's a custom, whatever it may be, on Fortune's Keep, push out a couple of these tournaments. Hopefully we're able to cast them, but I would love to see that. And specifically why I hope for that is because I really enjoy watching these competitive players be in a competitive high stakes environment while learning a brand new map, because you get some of the gameplay from them that you're never going to see when it's regular Rebirth or Caldera or even Verdansk, when they've been playing it for days and months and hours and hours and hours. That kind of unknown element is really exciting to me from a competitive standpoint.
Absolutely. I think you hit the nail exactly on the head. Something that we haven't got to see in a long time is people learning. I think it's really cool to see top level players have to learn on their feet, and I think it's a way for players more akin to me, who are either a little bit above average or below average, to be able to relate to those players. Kind of
Right.
take some of their. It's like it's hard to be a teacher, but sometimes if you just watch the way somebody works, who knows what they're doing, you can understand how they're learning, and I think that that's going to be a cool opportunity. The other thing I didn't mention about it is I think it's their last chance to get really good data about small maps. And everybody's been complaining about Verdansk, and I think it's so over talked about, but I'm going to talk about it for 1 sec. Everybody complains and says they want it back. They miss some of the interiors, the buildings and all that. My chat and I were going through, and there's over 120 plus buildings on this new Rebirth map, or Resurgence map. And that's quite a bit more than Rebirth if we went through and counted them. I think that the last count we did was like 128. And I think that if you look more at like the POIs like Town and Keep, that you'll notice a lot more Verdansky vibes. There's different height roofs. You can tell there's some 2 stories, some 3 stories, all different types of verticality elements. And I think this is their last chance to get, very focused data moving into Warzone 2 and see how much that potentially they need to focus on Resurgence style maps over their big map.
No, that's a huge point, Doug, and I'm so glad you brought that up before we move on, because like if you take a look at the even overlaid maps and compare them, I know it's small on your screen right now, but you guys can go look at it yourself. Like if you just compare Rebirth to what we're going to get with Fortune's Keep, whether it replaces it or not, you see a totally different vibe. It is POI to POI on Fortune's Keep, whereas in Rebirth, it's almost like the entirety of the map is one big POI. Like you could take Rebirth Island, shrink it down and put it on the coast and make it all a lot smaller, and it would almost like fit in this map as its own POI with the way it's currently laid out. Like look at Town. Doug said it perfectly. We haven't seen a POI like Town since Verdansk. Look how many streets there are, how many buildings there are. They have like a town square with buildings interior of that. This is like a mini version of downtown on the left side. The question is, how vertical will this map be, Doug? Like when you start thinking of Rebirth, I mean, we have what max, I think, with the basement of I think 4 stories maybe, but three really, with counting the roof, I guess there's 4 stories in the very middle of Rebirth. But on here on Fortune's Keep, you could see Keep itself be a 5, 6, 7 story building, depending, especially with balloons being involved on the map.
I think it's pretty obvious just looking at it that they clearly took what they learned off of Rebirth and off of Caldera when they took what they learned from Verdansk and applied it to this. Something that's vastly different right now than current Caldera is. Caldera's big hot drop spot is the peak. And it's dead center of the map. This map is pretty much dead area except for the hole in the ground at the grotto with a balloon right there, which will allow you to re-rotate back into whatever fight you want to choose. It also follows the same mantra of Rebirth Island that people learn to like, is that the north side was typically the higher verticality spaces with a couple of vertical elements in the mid-map, like a clock tower and things like that. And then you have to the left and to the right side other of their own high tier places that kind of fall off. If you look at the winery, you can see that it's terraced down. If you look towards the graveyard and the town, you can see they're lower than the cathedral or whatever you want to call the keep. And then the lowest verticality point on the map of Rebirth is security. And it looks like the same thing with Smuggler's Cove. So it looks like they took those parts to make it still feel familiar. They kept in certain parts of areas that people would have liked, like Verdansk. But they have balloons now in those areas to make rotating and a lot more verticality fights a lot more funner and easier to navigate. But then they also have the meta area like keep. Like if the circle goes up top, you're gonna want to be top of keep. So I think it's not gonna have that long of a life shelf. Well, I guess it will because Warzone 1 will still be around. But until the focus changes to COD 2.0, I think that this map will perfectly give them all the data points they need to figure out what players actually do and don't like, and how much of it is just Twitter bitching.
Well, something I like too, we haven't necessarily talked about right now, is the POI that sticks out to me the most is Lighthouse. I'm very curious to know the height of the lighthouse itself in relation to the map, and is that going to be a potential sniping spot opportunity? Exactly how far across this map can you see from the lighthouse? You know that it looks like there is one of those redeployed balloons just to the right of it. So I'm curious to know how lighthouse is going to potentially impact winery. Maybe I don't know what sightlines are going to look like all the way down to town or even up toward keep. That'll be really curious to see. But no, I have to agree with Doug. When you look at something like this, what takes note to me as well is visual clarity is something that's been stressful for a lot of people, especially on Caldera, because oftentimes it can just be hard to see people. Based on a color scheme right now, when you're looking at this, Doug, what do you think in terms of visual clarity with the color schemes that we get, at least from this top-down view?
I think that's another point that like they had to have learned from previous Rebirth and their failures with Caldera, is that people absolutely, and I've noticed this just playing different games recently, is that visibility and not having to fight your eyes is a huge part of enjoying a battle royale. It's a big part of why people like Blackout. It wasn't that hard to see people, clearly defined outlines with cartoonish looking characters compared to more realistic things that we have here. And I think the visibility will be better because there's more openness in the middle of the map. There's clearly 3 different verticality elements, like you mentioned, Katie, the lighthouse. I think the lighthouse will match the exact height of the gatehouse up top to lead into keep. Okay. And then keep will be a bit higher, and the overlook down at the bottom left will be a bit higher than the town, so that you can overlook the town and the grotto from there. And I think it's the same thought process with the lighthouse. The lighthouse and overlook can look over Smuggler's Cove, and they can look towards grotto a bit, and they can cover camp and winery. But the meta vertical height is going to be the top of keep, in my opinion. Lighthouse will probably be able to see right up into the steps leading towards keep, as just ways to have sight lines and be able to establish with you and your squad, hey, we need to go over there. A lot of action over there. Hey, there's a bunch of loadouts over here. I don't think that having bad visibility adds anything to a good BR, in my opinion. I think people complain about open spaces, but it's better to be able to see and not have a million trees and other little small debris in your way, and be able to plan out your rotations and what you want to do.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. And I think the other thing to remember too is that with the recent sniper nerf, even with some of these sight lines, like you're not going to get one-shot headshot if somebody's on top of lighthouse and you're over in graveyard or something like that, or even on the outskirts of grotto. Yeah, true, very true. Something else to mention. Somebody brought this up in chat. Are there any towers? I mean, it's very obvious that there was a tower onto the northwest corner of the map above town, which doesn't look like it's going to be a big problem unless it's weirdly just taller than everything else. You're going to see the towers on the edge of keep. I'm going to bring those up in just a second. And then you have another small looking tower type structure, the very bottom left-hand corner of the map, I guess southwest corner of the map, over on the edge of outlook or overlook in town. But something else, 2 things I wanted to mention looking at this map that I haven't heard anybody mention yet. One, keep denotes like castle. Like keep is a stronghold. It's a structure that, I mean, it's Fortune's keep. This is based around this keep. If you look closely at the keep and the way it's built, I think there is a large wall that's all the way around keep. Yeah. I mean, just like you would, if you think of a keep, if you think of a stronghold, if you think of anything like that, it's going to have a wall. A gatehouse doesn't just mean there's a house on the gate. It means the gate is actually guarding something, which means you could have some more limited access points into this structure. Now, with balloons and things like that, certainly can fly over the wall. You can see an entrance on the right and left-hand side of keep, or the east and west side of the keep. Looks like there's a couple different entrances, but it is worth noting there's probably going to be at least a what we'll call a 2-story wall all the way around, with these towers that probably extend up another story as well.
Yeah, kind of like the Gulag has, or the old prison in Verdansk used to have those towers up by the side of it. It's just going to be another castle, I think. And I also think that it'll play into the map's name called Fortune's Keep. That's where the best loot in the map will probably be, since they added high-value loot areas into Warzone. And I also do think, this is just me rambling, but I do think we'll have an Easter egg or something of that sort, kind of similar to what we have right now, where you can get specialist or something that's a bit difficult, but that ends up in the keep. And the keep will probably also have, since it's going to be, it looks to me at least, topography-wise, like it'll be the highest point on the map. I believe it'll have like basements, dungeons type things that we can't see from this top-down view, where some interesting fights can happen. And maybe, you know, even though we can't see those rotations in or out here, it'll be kind of like current peak. You know, there's rotations in and out up top, but then there's also 2 exits on the bottom.
Yeah, and I think too, you know, don't get too worried if you think this starts resembling prison at the top, because there's more buildings inside of keep than prison, but it could have those vaults that I was talking about. The other thing I wanted to mention that nobody's brought up yet, I truly and fully believe that Grotto has an access point to Smuggler's Cove. With the way it's currently shown, there's a little dip in Smuggler's Cove. I think you can walk through Grotto from the bottom if you don't want to take the balloon and come out in Smuggler's Cove and then rotate over to Overlook or Lighthouse, depending on the circle. And it could be a decent drop spot. And I think, like Doug said, it could be a fairly hot drop spot, similar to the way Peak currently operates, if you're not going to keep or otherwise.
Yeah, I said that whenever we first started. You probably overheard me, but or didn't hear me.
Dang it.
No, W, though, you're smart for thinking it. You can clearly see an inlet that leads towards the grotto.
Right.
And Kid Psycho in your chat just said grotto connecting to keep via tunnel. I could totally see it. I could totally see a bend right there that comes up right at the gatehouse. Maybe not all the way into the keep, but like every castle has a secret exit. We've all seen Game of Thrones.
Yeah, that's a great point, and that was something I was thinking about, as well as all the different access points, because obviously, as Gojj was saying, if keep and gatehouse are true to their name, and this is going to be somewhere that is kind of impenetrable from a frontal assault, are you going to have those access points from Grotto even behind it? Are there going to be access points if you're trying to rotate around from the Bay area? Are there going to be options for you to try and get into keep from there? I hope so. I kind of love that it adds, not only we talk about the verticality of the map itself, but verticality going down, right? To have that underlying area toward parts of the map to kind of open it up for rotations would be really exciting. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if that's the case.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting to see once we get more of those sized for scale maps and stuff.
Yeah.
Would people start to, you know, get out their I don't even know what the hell you call it. The thing that helps you measure things on a map, not a ruler, but they start checking the exact sight lines distance-wise between the top of keep and winery, or lighthouse to winery, or overlook to town. I think those distances will probably be about 250 meters or so, just outside of where you can accurately engage the team and not just waste your ammo. So I think it'll be more incentivizing towards that. That's the whole purpose of Resurgence, in my opinion, is to work on your mid to close range skills, or to just play a respawn mechanic type mode. And I mean, sure, if you want to go camp in the top of a tower with a sniper rifle, you're more than welcome to do so, but also to provide plenty enough counters to that. And I think that's why I was really impressed with where I saw the 4 balloon spots. The one at camp allows you to rotate potentially all the way up to the gatehouse, but not to the top of keep. The one at Bay will definitely allow you to get wherever you need to at keep. The one that's over at the left side of town will definitely allow you to at least make an entrance to the keep. And the one at Grotto will probably allow you to go wherever you are on the map, because you're taking a big risk by being in the middle of the map with everything around you being higher than you. I think that it's got a lot of interesting interminglings going on with it. But ultimately, we only get this for like what, 2 seasons? So
Yeah, I know
a lot to do about a little nothing.
I
you
know that's the thing. It's like we're gonna have this only for a little while. Now, okay, last conjecture about this, and then we can move on if we'd like to, unless somebody else has something else. Is okay if this is the new kind of like resurgence map. It is going to be difficult for me not to call it the new rebirth map. This is resurgence map, Fortune's Keep. But if this is true, when Warzone 2 comes out, are we only going to get the big map? And then if you want to play Resurgence, to start at least, you come back to Warzone 1. Do you think they force that on people, Doug?
Could see it.
That way this map actually gets utilized for closer to maybe like a year. Or a little less than that, maybe like 10 months.
People won't be able to level up their Modern Warfare 2 guns on Rebirth, so...
Are there going to be load time issues on anything like that as well, if you're swapping potentially from game to game or anything like that?
It depends on how much they support Warzone 1 still post release, but I don't.
They should still have well, basically, I think I'm allowed to talk about this. Basically, development. No, I'm almost 100%. Most of the development from my understanding, for Warzone 2 is being led by Infinity Ward,
right?
Mm-hmm.
Similar
to the OG Verdansk, but Raven Software is working hand in hand with them. I think that they have a much better plan going forward, and this is probably the shill and optimist to me. As to how to handle the craziness that it is launching Warzone again. So I think that they'll have a good plan in place. I think that Warzone 1 will be supported well enough to where you're not going to see the internet on fire like when Caldera launched in Modern Warfare 2019. Basically was broken for everyone for like 4 or 5 months.
Yeah.
I don't think we'll see that same thing happen again. And there's also rumors of a new launcher, and there basically has to be some type of a new launcher if it's going to launch on Steam.
Yeah, or at least another way to launch. But I don't know. I just thought it was an interesting question, Katie, because it's like, okay, if this is the new Resurgence map, and then Warzone 2 drops in December, which is all but confirmed. I'm pretty sure they did say that, actually, that it was going to be this year, which we would assume would be December. So if it's dropping in December, does that mean we're going to get a new Resurgence map in Warzone 2? And then, that's double the amount of maps even that the big maps that we've had, I guess. I don't know. It's just something to think about. And
I think it's sooner than December.
Oh, you think? Okay, hold on. Let's go there, Doug. Let's go there. Let's go ahead and move over to Warzone 2. Katie, let's talk a little bit about what Doug's been able to tweet out about what he does know about Warzone 2. One of the things we have to start with first, Doug, and then you give me your release time thoughts without obviously breaking any NDAs that you may or may not have. The big one, and I think I deleted the tweet, but I will pull it back up, or not deleted it, but took it off, was potentially that Warzone 2 map was like leaked kind of in the trailer, right?
Yes, absolutely. It was. It's there.
I'm pulling up your tweet right now.
Yeah, I've got it pulled up in front of me.
Talk to me a little bit about that picture, what you can tell, what you do know about the map based on those screenshots.
Well, the map is basically, you could tell that it was a part of the Warzone map, because what Infinity Ward told us in LA is that their big map ideas are off of what they learned from creating original Verdansk and having all the ground war maps intermingle together, but they weren't well tested enough to make. So the way they described it is they wanted all of their larger maps, they call them battle maps now, instead of just saying ground war map, which is basically what they were going to be, is that they were all designed to be their own play space that plays perfectly well and is tested very deeply within itself, but also to play into larger concept sandbox type maps. So all of these, like things that, for instance, that we used as a reference when I was talking to people at our dinner about it was like Quarry. Many of us did not realize, but the ground war map for Quarry in Modern Warfare 2019 has a lot of differences to what we have in Warzone, or what we originally had in Warzone. They changed it, and many people didn't notice. They would board up certain windows, cover certain sight lines, and change certain things as they learned. What we were told is that they already play tested for that with this one, so they learned more about that, and it was heavily implied but not directly stated that that would go into Warzone 2, which is why you see everybody saying that we learned about Warzone 2. But if you look at that picture like you're seeing, if you just look at that and compare it to what we saw with the Spec Ops map with Verdansk, you can see all the roads, you can see everything. And Tom Henderson had that leaked map that a guy named Imalden did a higher quality version of. And another thing, I don't know if you would have this ready to pull up, but you don't need to. When I mentioned the battle maps, they specifically told us about 2 battle maps. One was called Saeed, and the other one was called like a fishing village. They didn't give us a name for it. But those 2 locations are smack dab on the leaked map, and they looked like what these maps were described to us as being. So we have a good idea. It's got similar vibes to Verdansk, in my opinion. But I mean, High Rise probably going to be a bigger scale map than it used to be, because everything that's included. And you also have to think, like, they only mention the battle maps, and that their 6v6 maps would be the globe-trotting maps that are all over the world, but their battle maps would be in one location type thing. You just have to think that they might include small like nods in those places, like High Rise, like we see right here, or we had Shipment on the soccer fields of Verdansk for a while there, or we have Vacant within like right near the pier type thing. But we might get a lot of cameos like that and stuff like that. But I do think that I think they learned a lot. I think they learned a lot, and I think that what we have seen of the map so far is pretty indicative of what the final product will be.
I mean, that's all the news that you want to hear, right? I know oftentimes a critique with the lifespan of Warzone from beginning to where we are now has been, if you compare it to other BRs, it just feels like sometimes they do a lot more stuff. And especially in the downtime, kind of as we're pushing toward this next map, whether it's with Fortune's Keep or the Godzilla King Kong event or anything else, or even kind of some of the teasers, the leaks like this that you're getting, it feels like they've kind of ramped up in that regard, even toward the end of a life cycle here. It signals good news to me that if they're going to be doing this in this time frame, and we're already getting little bits and teasers of what's going to happen in the next map, that if they keep up this pace and we continue to get that fresh content, I wouldn't be surprised if it lures a lot of those players, big and small, who might have drifted away to other BRs, to come back to Warzone and check it out.
Yeah, and I don't think there's enough people that are mentioning either. I think a lot of people are forgetting that we're supposed to have this game for 2 years.
Yep.
So everybody's upset about the $70 price point where they increased by $10, but I have no issues. We used to have to buy a season pass. We don't have to do that anymore. You don't have to buy microtransactions if you don't want to. I think that for 2 years of support, the amount of maps we're getting, you already know how much content we're going to get within 2 years of this big of a game. I think that the $70 price is justified.
Yeah, not really the nature of this podcast, but I will say 2 years of the same competitive COD for like CDL I'll be really interested to see how that flow works for them, and what that will look like of 2 years same game back to back, and what teams will come out as dominant, and can people shake up their reign depending on content that's released, guns, etc. But
it's so funny that like we've played it and they've played it, but we can't say a word about it.
Yeah,
Weird.
I was gonna say there's only so much that you can tell me based on gameplay, but let's continue talking about Warzone. Katie, I've pulled up now on our screen this list of Doug, you had a list of things that you tweeted out, and it's also on your website, modernwarzone.com, where you put up some great articles. You talked about the new vehicle mechanics, Doug. So take us through some of those new vehicle mechanics and what you think or where you saw these.
This is actually one of my favorite parts of the extended presentation that we got at Infinity Ward Studios in LA. So just a little bit of a descriptor. It's like a little small theater room that you would expect to see in like some millionaire's house. Got like 16 or 20 so like theater chairs, and the music was absolutely booming. Like I thought my eardrums were going to blow out. But they showed us all of these details we learned right before they showed us a campaign mission called Convoy, where you're on a Mexican highway and you're taking over cars and jumping back and forth from left to right in between the cars. You're leaning out of windows, you're blowing other cars up, you're taking out tires and all that, and it looked phenomenal. Especially since a lot of people don't believe me and think I'm a shill for saying so, but it was clearly presented to us, and everything we did, including the multiplayer that we got to play, that everything is pre-alpha. And how good everything looked at first glance on pre-alpha was very reassuring for me. And I know a lot of people on the internet freaked out when we said it was pre-alpha, but let's just be honest. None of us are game developers, and none of us have no idea what the fuck it means between pre-alpha and alpha and beta. None of us knows what checks you have to hit to do that. It could be as simple as they haven't fully finished the water animations they're working on for something, and everything else could be fully done. So I am excited for it, and everything that we saw was really cool, like the hopping between cars and stuff. So they didn't really highlight this, but they wanted emergent gameplay was their big thing they talked about. And that was just different ways of playing that they didn't think people would do, but that the people learned how to play. And an example they gave was like how people would stack claymores on top of a recon drone or C4 and then send it out. Like they never would have thought that, but they gave the player the ability and the player could do it. So now I've been in many a situation on stream before where it doesn't happen as much in Caldera, but back in Verdansk, you would have James Bond, Jason Bourne movie-esque scenes where you're on a helicopter chasing a full squad that's got a Bertha, and it's just everybody shooting each other's vehicles and stuff, but there was really no interaction besides that or hopping out. Now you can break doors, and one thing they mentioned there that I didn't include in those bullet points is when the door gets knocked off, you can no longer lean out of that door because you have nothing to hold on to.
Ooh, I like that.
You can't shoot out of that door. When your tire pops, if your left tires pop, you go all the way to the left, like you can't drive. Some of the things I mentioned at the bottom that were hard to put into words, but that was cool, and they described it as, if you've ever watched Jackass or anything, you've seen them drive like a dirt bike into a lake to see if they can drive on water. Well, they included physics like that in this game. You can try to drive your cargo truck in the ocean. As long as your wheels are spinning, you'll keep like floating forward. I think that they're putting a lot of thought into everything with vehicles. And like something I didn't mention in the bullet point either is that they even mentioned like that you could jump onto somebody's helicopter and like yoink yourself up and like kill them, like a type of play you would only see while skydiving right now. But the real standout to me by far was during the thing they mentioned at the end that there was going to be healing vehicles at gas stations. They didn't mention anything about whether or not vehicles will have gas pump or gas tank, fuel meters that we all talked about back with Verdansk when Bertha Meta was killing everyone. In that mission, I can confirm that one of the vehicles I saw was a Bertha. I didn't mention that in my article, so a little bit of more details there. Bertha should be back, but work in a different way. And you guys got to see a Bertha too in the original reveal trailer where he's upside down hanging from the helicopter. He shoots a Bertha tire out. So that little snippet right there was one part of this campaign mission I'm referencing, the very beginning of it. And then you get chopped off and land on a roof, jump from that roof, and you're going like 60 miles an hour. You're doing movie scene shit, jumping from roof to roof. When you land on the roof, you can get on the front of their car and shoot them out of it. You can throw a drill charge on top of the car to blow them up out of it, but the car won't blow up, so you can steal it. It just is really hard to describe at a detailed thing everything that's listed in those bullet points in action until you guys get to see it for yourself, which I don't know if you guys ever will. I was told apparently by people who are used to going to these things that the campaign mission that you guys got to see on the boat was about all y'all are going to get for a long time.
Really?
And it's weird to me because I saw about 4 to 5 missions, like 30 plus minutes worth of footage. And I was like, okay, can't wait for everybody to see this. And apparently it might not happen. So,
well, what I'm interested about too when we talk about all of this is the TTK equivalent for damaging these vehicles. And what I mean by that is like, are there going to be indicators for the integrity of your door when someone's shooting it? Are you going to know, hey, I can only take a couple more bullets in this door or my tires? Or is it just going to be you have to have a feel for how quickly someone can blow out a tire or take out a door?
Hopefully somebody will correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I do remember seeing like how you will see in Forza Motorsport or other driving games, you'll see your vehicle, like an outline of it, and then certain parts will turn red or yellow based on how much damage they've taken or can continue to take. And like maybe that'll show you that you've got popped tires and you have to find a gas station. It'll be marked on your map or whatever. But I do think that is a part of it. Another thing that they talked about that I didn't really go into detail on is that they wanted to mention that every vehicle has its own husk now. So whenever you blow up a vehicle and like that helicopter comes flying down on you, it doesn't just disappear into the metaverse afterwards and you don't know what happened to it. Like you can create real obstacles by blowing vehicles up. So you could blow up a bunch of Berthas on a road and people can't drive through the road.
Yeah, it has like its own hitbox
and they'll stay there. Cover. Apparently there'll be permanent parts of the map after that for the rest of that game.
I like that a lot.
I do too. I can just envision now some campers setting up a barricade of exploded vehicles. I'll be curious to see what happens.
Take the time to do it. I think if you take the time to sacrifice to do some shit like that, I'm totally fine with it.
Yeah, and look, with all the things that you listed on here, the way they're emphasizing vehicles too, this kind of denotes to me is that there's a good chance, and we don't know this yet, but that this brand new map, which we know for sure will have water element to it, we have amphibious vehicles, etc. This is something that has been confirmed already. But the question in my mind is, with the emphasis on vehicles, aka emphasizing large scale movement across the map and quickly, there'll probably be an increased presence of vehicles on the map, which could denote that this map's going to be even larger than Caldera or Verdansk, because you're going to have more options to rotate around the map quickly. And these aren't like nuanced or new features that we're seeing of like shooting out tires. Like, they have this in other titles. Fortnite currently has it. But one of the things you notice in Fortnite is the different areas, the different ways they have mobility, whether it's the vehicles, the cars that fly around the map at insane speeds, cannons, etc. Like, there are a ton of ways to rotate quickly. I have a feeling this brand new map could be even bigger, not only overall map size, but also potentially player count.
Yeah, I can feel you on that, especially just off the information that we have publicly available right now, and especially with this was the part that blew my mind at the presentation, and I got to personally ask the entire Infinity Ward staff about it. I was like, so we were down to the last two questions of the session, and they had mentioned that thing that they're talking about in chat. They said 300 AI and 100 people. And I was just shitting in my brain thinking about that. Like, I didn't know, because it was in the context of talking about Warzone. And I was like, oh, God. Oh, God. We didn't get much. Basically, their answer I basically can't talk about to a major degree. But it's heavily implied that is for Warzone. So that implies to me it's got to be a pretty big play space. It's got to have places for those AI to feel natural, which is kind of what they answered. The AI is not supposed to feel like it doesn't belong where you find it. Like, you're supposed to, it's not just supposed to be like, hey, some guy jumps out of a bush, it's an AI that aimbots you. It's supposed to feel native to the map. It's supposed to feel like it was there and designed that way with a purpose. I do think it'll be a bit bigger, though, Gojj. And something that most people haven't noticed is when they talked about the water, there's going to be water on this map. I believe there will be rivers and other things. But they also made sure to tell us that, like, there will be currents. So you may go faster one way up or down a certain section of water than you will another. Or, like, they made sure to mention that if you throw a portable, or not a portable, but a proximity mine into the water, it'll deploy floaties. And if you throw it into a river or something that has a current, you just send that bitch all the way across the map and find out what happens with it. So I think that they're really thinking about ways for anybody to have a good time. And I'm excited for it.
Are there any concerns you might have when it comes to lobby fill times with larger maps? Are they going to increase the amount of people in the lobby? Are there potential hiccups or problems with that down the road once it's not so new?
I'm not sure, because that was the part that stood out to me that I haven't really written about or had confirmed, because when I asked them about 300 AI, the real part that stuck out to me is that they mentioned 100 players. And that was their exact wording. They said, we have the capability now to have up to 300 AI combatants and up to 100 live players within one game at one time. So I thought to myself, that sounds like a reduced player count.
Interesting.
Right.
Didn't get any confirmations about it. Didn't get anything I could say publicly. Yes, no, maybe so. But that is what they said. 300 AI in some way, shape, or form. Sorry, I keep checking my phone. I'm just making sure
No, you're good.
I'm not getting blitzed for saying something I shouldn't. But
no, absolutely. You got to take care of yourself. So if there's anything you say, it can always be redacted in the audio and video versions, by the way. So not the live version. This will live forever. But it's a really good point. 300 AI into the 100 player count. The first conjecture in my mind is, we can increase the player count, blah, blah, blah. Let's think about it logically, though. Let's think about where the game's currently at and where it's been heading and the trajectory of Warzone, which has been not more players in games, but this kind of catering towards more chances at playing. You have the Gulag tokens currently that you can find and get another Gulag. You have redeploy tokens that skip the Gulag altogether and you're flying right back in. And this is honestly, let's be real about this. One of the reasons that they added that, or maybe just an added bonus for that, was that we're having less players play the game right now. So the more chances that you can come back, the less you have to continue to load back into lobbies, and we're having issues loading into lobbies right now. But With that being said, everybody loves Resurgence to some degree, and if you can take pieces of that Resurgence, at least hints of it, onto the big map, it has been received fairly well, even with reduced player counts. And with reduced player counts, like comes with that server stability kind of like added bonus that they always talk about with the current game. I could see, even if the map getting bigger, or even if the map gets bigger, you could still see only 100 players, but then there's still a lot of stuff to shoot, because you said there could be up to 300 AI. And again, this isn't a new concept. It sounds new when you talk about Call of Duty and Warzone. We've had limited AI in Caldera, if you guys remember. I guess, what is that called? I don't even remember the POI, what it's called. They like changed the name to like the gas area. Factory. Thank you.
Factory, yes. And then they had some come out of the bunkers.
Yes, thank you. I cast this game professionally. I don't know the POIs. Yes, out of Factory, there was some limited AI around there, but also think about, again, back to Fortnite, you've got a ton of IO guards all over the map, something to shoot at, ways to get loot, something different. Think about Apex. They've had AI across the map with their little, like, whatever they're called, monsters that roam around in the different POIs. Even this other game that barely anybody is talking about, not as much anymore, at least, is Blood Hunt, this other BR, this vampire BR, which is a lot of fun. They have kind of these IO guard equivalents around the map AI. It's interesting that Warzone has been one of the main BRs that hasn't really implemented a larger scale AI. It seems like that's coming in Warzone too, based on the things you're saying, Doug.
Yeah, and it just kind of has always felt like it. Like when they first did the zombies in Verdansk, it immediately felt to me like AI test. Let's find out how many we can put on the map and what they do. And then when they did these recent iterations with Factory and the bunkers, like the AI just don't really feel like they Infinity Ward spent a lot of time talking about how much they've improved the system to make them feel like they actually are things. Like they have a life that they want to protect and live. Like they don't want to just run into your bullets like they're full sending. And I think that's been the issue, is that all the AI in Warzone so far has just felt like it full sends you. It doesn't do anything good. And based on what they said, they've learned a lot from that, and it's going to be much more dynamic, and things are gonna function a lot differently. And I think this will play into the DMZ mode they haven't talked about as well, which will also be a big focus, just from experience playing Escape from Tarkov, Fortnite, Apex Legends, everything. Like you said, Gojj, just not something new. It is new to Warzone. It's not exactly new, but the big problem that people have with Warzone is like it feels like you just rush to buy your loadout, and then the rest of the game is kill, 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 kill. And a big thing that I think they're trying to work on is making emphasis towards mid-game and looting. And you mentioned all the different regain opportunities. And when I was able to talk to creative director at Raven Software, Ted Timmons, during the Season 3 Reloaded call before you guys all found out about the reduced player count and all that, I remember thinking everybody would lose their minds. But these guys are actually a lot better at what they do than the community gives them credit for. They somehow reduced the overall max player count, added multiple new regain mechanics, and people are still breaking their PRs, which is pretty incredible because they made sweeping changes all at once. So I do think that they're really, and a big point of emphasis for him is that is what makes Warzone what Warzone is. Gulag, multiple chances to buy back, regain opportunities galore. You're never out of the fight. There's always a chance to regain and come back better than before. And absolutely love that about it, is that they're leaning into that. And you can tell by how much they're leaning into Rebirth. New Rebirth, we just got Rebirth Reinforced, now we have this. I'm excited for it. I do think that there is room to discuss upping or lowering the AI versus live player count, but it's all things that they'll figure out as they go, and as we get our hands on it, hopefully we get to play it before it goes live and give you guys our opinions on it and stuff like that in the future, because definitely piqued all of our interest, especially Swag. That was the only time I saw Swag ask a question there, and he was like, well, what's going to happen with our PRs? Do AI count as kills? There's a ton of questions.
That's internally. A great one I was wondering about.
Yeah. Swag asked that directly, and Infinity Ward said that it's an ongoing conversation, basically. Like, they want to figure it out, too, what's healthiest for the player base. They don't want to necessarily interrupt things, but they want to lean into what makes Warzone the full package of what it is and separates it from other Battle Royale experiences.
Well, a big thing about that, too, is no one who's playing a game wants to be forced into just watching other people play the game. We know how painful that could be in Blackout. I loved Blackout. I thought it was a ton of fun, but if you die early, you're just sitting there. for a really, really long time. And I love that now that there are so many opportunities to get back into the game, so that kind of our finicky, short attention spans are given that opportunity right back in. You make a mistake, whatever, your teammates can get you back, so on and so forth. Maybe you find one of those tokens right now, whatever it may be. It keeps you constantly engaged in the game. Whereas in certain scenarios, whether it's Blackout or other BRs, you just end up sitting, and no one wants to just sit when they want to be playing the game. So I like that a lot. But per Swag's question, and that was something I was wondering about that I wasn't actually going to bring up, but if they're going to count AI kills, you'd think they're going to have to be counted separately from player kills, right? Because at least from a competitive perspective, that blows 2v2 kill races out of the water, because if all the kills are counted as the same amount of total kills, how are you going to know, AI versus actual players?
Yeah. And it was another point of interest that Jay got brought up, because he's always the information database guy. He brought up that players are just going to farm AI to level up their guns, and there's just all types of different conundrums that can come out of it. We just have to see what their actual vision is and how it's going to play out. Like the current leaks right now, I'm not sure if they're correct or not, but talked about a stronghold, and that'd be how you get your loadout. You have to fight boss AI and all this stuff like that. Sounds interesting, but we really it's hard to conjecture on it until we actually play it for ourselves. And one thing that I want people to listen to your podcast to know is when I was first starting Modern Warzone and the leaks were swirling around what Warzone was really going to be, the initial reaction to finding out that it wasn't Blackout 2 was just disgusting. Everybody was so pissed off the day they found out that loadouts were a thing and there weren't attachments, and that you could have regain opportunities and all this. And people just weren't ready for change. But
they never are.
Katie made a great point when it comes to, like, I used to love playing PUBG, and one of the big emphases on battle royales is that you always need to be on the edge of your seat, because every kill, every death matters. It should be important. There's a story. And Warzone has somehow managed to wrap up the respawn thing and still make it feel like a BR and make it feel meaningful when you win the game. I think they just have to make sure they focus on holding on to that aspect of their game and focusing everything else around that, and making sure there's more of a looting phase. But people originally said that the game was dead in the water as soon as they found out that there wasn't a tiered armor system, that health automatically regenerated like it still does to this day. There was just so much abrasiveness to the changes that were listed that everybody said it was fake. There's no way they would do that. It would flop. Lo and behold, Warzone comes out. And it's one of the hit battle royales you've ever seen. And people still to this day say that loadouts are one of the worst things ever. And I think that Infinity Ward and Raven Software have acknowledged that multiple times, that they do not like how centered around the game loadouts are, and that it took away the looting experience of a battle royale. All that stuff that fills up your dead time. And they need to fill that in some way that engages the player. And I think AI is their way to do that, and makes you actually have to have a challenge to get your best gun. If I was thinking of creating a Warzone map, it would be the AI guards the best loot.
No, I mean, that's been the case, and I use Fortnite as an example because I had a chance to cast Fortnite a number of times. I got another one coming up on Thursday, but for the 100K Dr. Disrespect event, it was a 2v2 kill race in Fortnite, and one of the big things was like dropping on the highest tier loot, so you could grab the best loot. You don't have loadouts in that game, but it was dropping on the high tier loot. But then you had the IO guards that were all around you. You had to slay those out. You get some extra loot, sure, from them, but make sure you don't take enough damage from them so that you don't get third party. Like those little aspects that provide, even in the mid game of fighting, these IO guards or whatever in Fortnite is great. And then when we start talking about bosses, there is a fine line between putting something into the game that enhances it and putting something into the game because it sounds cool. Like if you were to add these like bosses that they have in Fortnite that are like fairly easy to kill and just a little bit stronger than a normal like traditional AI, that's fine. But if you're putting in like these big old raid boss type people, right, that take a very long time, it's more of like an Easter egg type thing. Like that's where you're going to cater towards like a limited time game mode. And I can't see Call of Duty doing that, because when you start thinking about the way Warzone has been created and the way it's still, at least to some very minute degree, translates to the multiplayer base that it was originally founded on, like the reason that there are a lot more redeploy options in other BRs is because of Warzone. It's because of this idea of how do we cater to our multiplayer base while still being a fairly true BR? How do we cater to our multiplayer base that's, built around this like building out weapons with attachments? Oh, loadouts. This makes a lot of sense. And I could see them kind of trying to play around with other options for looting aside from just like running around the map and not shooting somebody for 10 minutes.
They'll
Worth
have to
mentioning-
be.
Yeah, go
oh,
ahead,
sorry.
Katie.
I was just gonna say they're gonna have to be, if they do decide to implement something like you guys are talking about when it comes to kind of like a boss in whatever substantial AI sense that means. I would assume they've learned a lot from the Krampus experiment, which was to say Krampus was a lot of fun, but Krampus should not be able to eat that many bullets and still be chilling, right? Like that was
Yeah.
kind of like a raid boss that was outrageous, because if you wanted to try and kill Krampus, it took so long, and you were almost guaranteed to get third partied. So I imagine if they do implement that, it's gonna have some sort of learnings from at least Krampus TTK, if you will.
That was like I got to ask them about the AI, and that was like my second fold part of my question was, I hope that you guys are aware like how well this has to be done. For you to do this properly, it needs to be the perfect difficulty bots. They need to be meaningful and they need to be engaging, but they don't need to be aim bots and they don't need to ruin your experience. What is a very hard middle ground to meet for anybody who's played Escape from Tarkov. Sometimes when you fight a raid boss, it's the coolest thing ever, but they are the hardest people in the game. And sometimes their AI goes wonky and it's just not a fun experience. Other times it doesn't go wonky and it is. It can't be something that'll be, you know, good or bad or this or that. And not saying we talked about bosses, but just talking about the difficulty level. I made sure to ask them, I was like, yo, just to make sure you guys are aware, you know, we want something that's meaningful and engaging, but that's not veteran. We don't want veteran campaign difficulty bots that are just lasering us down. And that's when they responded to me and they said, well, we thought about that, and that's the thing that we've come to a middle ground with, is that no matter how difficult they ever are, if you get downed by AI, they cannot finish you. They will just turn off from shooting you. There is you do not get full finished by an AI. They can down you, but then they allow your team a chance. And when they answered that, it kind of made me realize that they are actively thinking about how badly AI could affect the experience.
Sure.
And they also made sure to establish that they were confident that this is a good path forward.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great thoughts. I mean, I think honestly they should bring Krampus back as a kill streak. You know,
No, on that note, I'm going to the restroom real quick and grabbing a drink.
Yes.
Okay,
Is that fine?
Yes.
Yeah.
5 minute.
Yeah, go for it.
No, Gojj, something that you know what I really miss, and I would love to hear the sentiment from chat actually. My favorite in-game event in Warzone was the Halloween event, where you got to be like whatever, you turned into a zombie or whatever it was, and you could just leap around. I loved that mode. I so desperately hope that comes back in whatever form, because aside from the fire shoddy meta, which was occurring at the same time along with the thermal scopes, the fire shoddy was hell. But that game mode, Gojj, I could have played that forever. It was so much fun.
I totally agree. You know, it's funny you bring that up too, because I was actually, during this little break before we close out the podcast, we had brought up this idea of, okay, if they decide to get rid of Rebirth and replace it with Fortune's Keep, like, you know, backtracking a little bit, if they do a live event, how do we do that well, and how do we do that in an entertaining fashion that it brings back all the big streamers that used to play Warzone? Like the classic name that always gets brought up is Nick Merckx. Like, he came back for that Godzilla event, hadn't played Warzone in a very long time, came back, and that's what you want from those types of events, is to reattract the player base. But for Rebirth, like, what could we expect to see for some of these live events? Doug mentioned potentially nuking this entire Rebirth Island because it fits within some semblance of the canon that we have in the lore. I would love to see something more akin to what you're talking about. Rather than like a cutscene, we see something like zombies have invaded Rebirth Island. You get to essentially play, that Halloween event or something similar to it on Rebirth as it like closes out.
Yeah, no, I events like that. So something that it always makes me think of is I'm a big MMO person. I know I mentioned it earlier. I played the ever living hell out of Final Fantasy 11 and 14, and 14 when it initially launched, pretty rough is a kind way to put it. But when they were doing the whole massive revamp of 14, I'm talking everything was blown up. They had the most incredible end game community-wide like cinematic experience for people to usher out the old and usher in the new. And I think especially here, if they decide to do something like that, you can't underestimate the impact that communal moments like that have, where you all get on together. Maybe you're sitting there and an in-game event happens and you're not even shooting at the people next to you. You're just watching this volcano start to erupt or whatever it may be. When done right, you never forget those moments in your experience with a video game. Like with 14, I will never forget sitting there with my link shell and watching all of that hit. And I think they could really recreate some of that impact in Warzone if they want to, that players will walk away and say, wow, that was so cool. You never forget it. It's something that you reference. It's something that keeps you coming back to the game.
No, totally agree. Other thing we mentioned too was that, hey, there's water. There's a lot of water coming to Warzone 2. Let's talk just briefly again, Katie, to talk through this idea of swimming. I mean, I know swimming was released, or like teased that it was going to be released in Modern Warfare 2 and multiplayer as well. It's going to be back. That concept will be moved over to Warzone 2, which I'm really excited about, the ability to swim through all of our rivers and our lakes. Yeah. But what do you think the implications of that are going to be? Can you swim underwater and like hide in the water theoretically on rotations? Like, I don't know. There's a lot of question marks in my mind of how swimming will play into Warzone 2.
Well, swimming, I mean, it's inherently going to add so much depth depending on how it's implemented to how you can play the game, the counterplay, the flanks you can make, whatever it might be. But Doug, since you rolled in, I'd love kind of your insight on that. How do you think swimming in whatever way it could get implemented will impact the actual play style on the map?
That was something we talked about a good bit too, because they'd spent a lot of time talking about all the work that they put into making sure they did water right. They said that they'd wanted to do it for Warzone and Modern Warfare 19, but they wanted to make sure if they did water, they did it to the best of their abilities. And apparently I know it's really, really hard because not a lot of video games nail water. They gave us a demonstration of a boat driving out in the ocean and how the water dynamically works with that. And it was an extremely dev tool look at it because they're still making sure they get all that right. We watched a whole mission that was pretty much done entirely underwater for the most part. It's stealth elements. I'm interested to see how it works, but one big point of emphasis was that it is a tactic. It's not a crutch. And they wanted to make sure that when I used to watch PUBG and they had their first big events on I forget who hosted them, but with Dr. Disrespect and everybody's playing at LAN, a lot of those ended with, if it was by water, there were teams just sitting underwater, just trying to get as many placement points as possible. That's something they absolutely do not want to happen. They didn't give us exact timing on how long you could breathe underwater. We did talk about it, and they said that that's something that they're still trying to hone down. There's only a certain amount of things you can use underwater. Like right now, it's just pistols and knives, or throwing knives, or certain equipment. And but that is also still up for debate. I went and talked to Pat Kelly after we had our before we had our presentation, because I knew about the water elements. And I asked him, I was like, don't you think the gun nuts from Modern Warfare 2019 are going to be kind of upset that we're firing bullets underwater, through water, with these guns that aren't designed like the current, when I recently replayed the Call of Duty Ghost campaign, and it has an underwater rifle, which currently got added into Warzone, the UGR or whatever, the most recent Cold War SMG. And that gun shoots darts, so that makes sense from a ballistic perspective. But one thing they wanted to make sure is that bullets that are shot through water do less damage. Bullets shot from underwater do less damage. It's going to have all its own mechanics and stuff to make it to where you're not using it to win fights. You're using it to re-engage. You're using it to rotate. You're using it for all of those reasons. And I think just based on how they mentioned that it'll be a part of all of the major modes, campaign, multiplayer, 6v6, 12v12, whatever big modes they're going to have, and Warzone 2, they mentioned that it'll be a part of all of them in some way, shape, or form, that they've really thought about how they want the water to dynamically affect gameplay. Because it was a bit concerning to, think about, is this more of a rad opportunity, or is this something cool and dynamic? And I think they really want it to be cool and dynamic.
Right. Yeah.
Underwater assassinations, though. Imagine there's an actual animation specifically
There's
for
one in the
assassinating
campaign.
underwater. Yes.
Oh, that's amazing.
I need that. I need that just for the moments in competitive Gojj when we see something crazy happen.
I'll be
Yeah,
curious visibility too, Doug. I mean, I was going to bring this up during the kind of like, and I appreciate your insight on all of these question marks around swimming. Is like the question was, can you even hold your breath underwater? Is there going to be a limit? Those things will continue to be adjusted, I'm sure, right? But in terms of visibility in the water, it seemed like bullet velocity will change as the bullets enter the water. But if I see somebody rotating through the lake around, or the ocean or the river or whatever on this brand new map, and I've got a sniper or I've got an AR or an LMG and I can rain bullets down on them, what is it going to look like to see them, first of all, in the water? Is it going to be easy like it is in Fortnite, or is it going to be difficult where it's like cloudy and that's the best way to rotate around the edge of the map for like customs or something like that?
I can't really describe it from personal experience because that's a part of the things that we can't talk about, but I can say that I also have questions. I don't know exactly what it'll look like. I don't know exactly what it'll look like with the finished product, but I also have questions.
Okay, got it. I love it.
I do think that everybody thinks that I'm just a shiller. I won't say anything bad. I will say this, that I was not impressed by the water.
Oh.
Okay.
Not,
right.
Not in my own gameplay things, but what they showed, and like you guys got to see a snippet of it in the reveal trailer where you see Price come up from underwater with gas.
Yeah.
It just didn't look good to me.
Interesting.
And that's tough, and I think that's because I've played games before that do water perfectly, like Sea of Thieves. And they mentioned how they're gonna.
Water is so great.
The best of the best of the best, handled on a live cloud server at all times, so everybody sees the same thing. They mentioned some of the stuff that they talked about in this was how the waves are going to interact. I'd have to pull up my own notes, or like how water will look. Like they don't want it to necessarily be two people looking at two different things, because some of it'll be client side, some of it'll be server side. But they did try to establish that. But at the same time, like I don't understand game dev. I try to, but it was all just kind of like PR talk.
Yeah.
I do think that by the time it's finished, with the way they talked about it, it's going to look great. And I will say that it was the least impressive part of what I saw. Not that it was bad, because it being bad is just not necessarily true. Because when they showed the tech demo out in the ocean, driving it with the boat, I was really impressed at what all it was doing. But it was in a way that I can only describe as like a tech demo. Like there wasn't a lot of models loaded in. It was pretty much boat, water, look what water does with boat. Yeah. And I was like, cool. But I hope that they focus on the parts of the water that are actually going to dynamically affect the gameplay, and maybe not worry so much about how it's going to look. I know it's a AAA title, and I won't say it looked bad, but I don't know. With as much time as they spent talking about it, I know it's a huge emphasis point for them.
All right. Two thoughts I had. One was spurred on by Kid Psycho in chat that said, what if there was a gas mask type equipment that allows for further underwater travel that would be crazy in rotations? I totally agree. That's something we can talk about, and then we'll kind of finish out this episode. Number two, let's say you could theoretically hold both a gas mask and a breathalyzer. That's not the word I'm looking for. Whatever you want to call it. Like a snorkeling equipment. Make sure you're not drunk while you're swimming. But like snorkeling equipment or something like that. Maybe you could hold both of them. Would the gas affect you while you're underwater? So you could like swim in gas underwater and not take damage. When you pop up to grab breath, when you pop up to grab breath, that's when it starts hurting you, and you can swap your snorkel equipment for a gas mask. Talk about the god rotations. That's all I'll say. There is a lot of cool things out there that we could see depending on the way the map is formulated. The little piece of info that we have about the map, it seems like maybe it's not an entire island, that only part of the map is surrounded by water for Warzone 2, but I'm totally conjecturing here.
Well, I wonder, did they ever, and this seems minor, so probably not, did they ever say anything about toggling your gas mask so that we can get away from I touched the gas, my animation happens, I'm dead because I can no longer accurately fire in the gunfight I'm in?
No, they didn't. They might feel like they're at a better spot now, because I think it's working okay now to where if you are ADS'd, it won't put on or take off your gas mask.
Okay.
I think they might feel like that was their solution. I don't know though. That's just educated guessing.
Awesome.
Yeah, a lot of big question marks still, but a lot of really cool information. We've covered a lot. Doug, as we kind of close this episode out, anything we didn't ask that you would want to talk about in terms of Warzone 2 or Fortune's Keep?
Is in terms of Warzone 2 and Fortune's Keep, maybe not. Just that I do think that based on what they were talking about with the extensive testing that they, all they're learning from Verdansk, which they all said, I know this is all PR talk. They said the same thing about Caldera, but I do think that that it will play better, in my opinion. It seems like, based on the way they emphasized it at the studio, it seemed like they have put a lot into playtesting each of the individual POI type larger battle maps, as they call them, and making sure that they function well alone, which will increase, it'll make every POI on the map be a place worth landing at.
Okay.
I very much so like that, because that's certainly not the case right now for Caldera.
Yep, absolutely. Other than that, I mean, we didn't really talk much about 6v6, but this is a Warzone podcast, so
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of people talking about 6v6. There's a lot more conversations that'll come up with 6v6, so we'll stick to
maybe
Warzone.
we're talking about the equipment and field upgrades.
Yeah, sure.
I had that pulled up. I was wondering if we were gonna hit that, because I was reading through obviously your tweet about the inflatable decoy field upgrade.
Yeah.
And I am just here to watch people lose composure when they get absolutely hoodwinked, bamboozled by one of those and die because of it.
It was really cool the way they explained it in the studio, because whenever they first started talking about it, I was like, what the fuck is this? And then they started to explain like kind of the details of it and how it'll work, and that you can kind of throw it as like a proximity charge or something like that, to where it'll either instantly go off, or it'll go off when somebody gets close to it, or you could activate it like a C4. And the cool thing about it is that audio orients towards the player. So it's like a better decoy grenade, basically. Like you throw it, and you can use it in all types of situations, which I could see some cool situations from the 2 new game modes they talked about, like prisoner rescue or the knockout mode or whatever, to where you just use that to bamboozle people. Like we currently use the sprays, like I mentioned in my little tidbit you guys have pulled up right there. The smiles on their faces when they talked about this, and the way they talked about it in playtesting, said that it was genuinely like not frightening, but it got your attention even if you knew what it was. Because when they said it, they said when it activates, it makes the exact same audio as a player going from prone to standing up and aiming at you.
Jump scares, yes,
Dude.
more
And
of
it
them.
immediately orients to the closest player to it.
Yeah.
It's a lot more dynamic than what it probably reads like, based on what they said about it. So I thought that one was pretty cool. We all laughed our ass off whenever they announced the DDoS field upgrade, and we were like, y'all actually calling it that? And they were like, yes.
Yeah,
I was like,
oh wait, this is
I like when they lean
This is
into things like that,
trimmed.
honestly. I like it quite a bit. So something to talk about, that you also put up the tactical camera field upgrade. I want to touch back. Do we know how exactly it works, in the sense of like, can you place, when you were talking about what you were talking about, that you put into the water and it had like a little like flotation device, what were you talking about, that you could float it down the river?
Yeah, it was a proximity mine.
Can you put a camera on proximity
that'd
mine,
be
float it down the
5
river, use the camera to see where you are? Like, can you do stuff like that?
So I know I can talk about this because this was a part of the presentation, and shout out to Marksman's who asked a question revolving around this type of thing. Is they kept talking about emergent gameplay, and what you're talking about right now is the definition of emergent gameplay, giving players the option to do cool things like that they didn't think they could do, but when they go to try it, it works, and they're like, oh shit.
Yeah.
So he asked if you could throw something like that onto your vehicle and it would still work. The answer was yes.
Ooh, it creates so many options to express play styles, and I love that that's a thing, especially because we're going to get some incredible content coming out of people who innovate on stuff like this in game, like stuff that you would never even think to do.
That's exactly what I was about to say. Look, at the more opportunities for content made by players inside the game doing creative things, the better for the game, the more promo for the game. They're thinking this way as well. We are in a brand new digital age of gaming where influencer relations and influencer content creation can make or break a game. And this is one of those ways. Something simple, something small like this are ways that the content that is created is going to be even more intriguing and attractive for players to come try different things like that. Like okay, let's even back up without going way too off tangent. Like, Battlefield is out of the world tanked, absolutely destroyed, but original Battlefield, when it came out, all the new different ways to create content with the RPG shots and hopping out of a plane, taking a sniper shot, and then hopping back into the plane, those pieces of content were the reason people wanted to play Battlefield, not necessarily because of the general game. It was those pieces of content that attracted people to the game. The same thing could be said for Warzone 2 with the way we're hearing that they're designing the game, and that's what I'm really excited about, is to see these different ways to be creative. But to finish off this topic, yes, tactical camera field upgrade sounds really cool. Different ways to utilize it. We've got the inflatable decoy, and then this is trimmed on the screen, so I'm not going to keep it up. But the DDoS field upgrade. Talk to me a little bit about the DDoS field upgrade, Doug.
Just one thing, your chat is right. Black Ops 1 had a deployable camera that you could use.
Correct.
That people would sometimes use to meme and do things. And I saw people panicking on the timeline today about the tactical camera. And don't worry, when we were in theaters, I was in the front row and I turned and looked at everybody when they said tactical camera, and I was like, what the fuck is this? And then they kind of explained it a bit, and it doesn't, I don't think it's going to be anything that we have to worry about. I think that people are going to worry about these things because they have potential to be exploitable, but that's also part of the emerging gameplay. They have to find out how players will use these things and whether or not it fits within the gameplay that they would like. I got to ask a question about that one. I think it's very indicative that it lines up with emerging gameplay because of that little excerpt right there where it says that players can jump from cameras to other cameras that their teammate uses. Yeah. But you're not allowed to use it if you're dead. So I made sure to ask that question. I can't just go and call out after I was dead that, with my camera. And they were like, no, if you're dead, it's dead. And I was like, okay, great. But moving on to the DDoS, actually really cool. It's something that Warzone could use right now, in my opinion. There's not really good ways to take out Berthas and people maneuvering around with vehicles, so throw that bad boy in there. It works as an EMP, stops vehicles in their tracks, but allows you to potentially have ways to hijack them and make new cool gameplay functions around vehicle play.
Did you see the QuickTime event for restarting the engine?
What do you mean?
So in the DDoS, in the bottom, it says prompted that they have to restart the engine with a QuickTime event.
They specifically mentioned that as one of the things that the DDoS would happen. When your vehicle gets DDoSed, the driver will get an event, and they described it as like a QuickTime type event that they would have to restart the engine. So it takes their focus away, gives you a chance to get them, and as well as we haven't talked about the grenade charge, basically like a fuse from Rainbow Six, where you can stick it into a wall. You can also stick those on vehicles, and they if you stick them on a vehicle the way it was described to us, I could be wrong, this is how I interpreted it, was that it will not blow up the vehicle, but it will down everybody in that vehicle if they don't get out when it shoots the grenade in the vehicle. That way you can take the vehicle and use this as a hijacking weapon. The DDoS is more to stop the vehicle, stop them from leaving. You can blow up some of their tires, and then when they're done, you can take it, because they mentioned with the drill charge that they didn't want it to fully destroy the vehicle because they wanted you to make a cool play, get all these guys out of a vehicle, hijack their vehicle, and take it to a gas station and make it your own.
Well, I love
right
that.
now,
That's
there's
not
a lot of ways
right
to do those things. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
They wanted to play more because vehicles are a huge part of any BR. I think the H1Z1 fully showed that when vehicles are in a BR, that they're a massive part of it. PUBG also showed us the same thing. You need them. But at the same time, you can't make them the whole focus of the game without providing enough counterplays. And right now, there's just not enough counterplays to a guy driving around in a Bertha game. And they're even with only these 4 details, that's a lot of counterplay opportunities for vehicles.
I like that a lot. That's really interesting.
I totally agree. Thanks for taking us here to talk about these things, because these are things that we will definitely see in Warzone 2, definitely things that will be important in Warzone 2. This is a great way to kind of close out the conversation around Warzone 2. Fortunes keeps exciting. Warzone 2 is exciting. Doug, thanks for coming on, my man. We talked about a lot today. A lot of content has come out, and I was excited to have you on for the Warzone 2 discussion, but the Fortune's Keep discussion was just as exciting as well, because it's this brand new content that we get kind of waiting on Warzone 2. So thanks for giving us a lot of your insight on that, especially right after it was just announced. You've been tweeting up a storm recently. So Doug, as we finish this up, man, tell us anything else you're working on. I know I got to give you a shout out real quick that I know you've actually been casting a few events as well. You and I talked about your kind of like slow growth as a caster, and there's been a number of events that you've casted over the last few weeks, and I know you're looking for a few more.
Absolutely. That's probably my biggest thing that I want to lean into. I've tried everything at this point. You know, I've been a news guy, I've been a content creator, I've done all these things. But my true happy place is being in the booth, just like you guys.
Yes.
Something about casting and getting to put all of this wealth of information I have about the game into practice to help educate and inform other people who are just watching and maybe don't get why said player did this or said player did that. Or like, I remember one of my first casting gigs in Verdansk. One of the coolest things that I got to do was inform my co-caster that, you guys remember that people used to walk on the staircase, the railings, so that they didn't make any footsteps. I remember saying that in the chat, going like, whoa, I didn't know that. It just, to me, it's really cool to be able to provide both color and play-by-play commentary and inform people about something I'm extremely passionate about. I could talk about it for 12 hours a day and not have a problem. And I am thankful. I would love to. I think I would fit well as a. I think that I'm starting to discover more and more that I would probably fit best as like a desk analyst or somebody who provides really deep analysis, color commentary. But I'm trying to figure out where I fit in, and within the whole Call of Duty niche and scene. I already know I can provide information, but I want to be able to provide it in another way. And casting is my biggest. That's the hill I'm really trying to climb, because I can't think, even when a cast is completely fallen apart, technically, I had a great time every single time. Every single time, it's always a blast.
That's
and
how
you
you
always
know,
learn, and you gain more, and you get the itch. Exactly, you get the itch to do it again. And I'm just hoping that I get more opportunities, and hopefully one day I can be involved with something big with you guys, because I would love to, you know, even just interviewing players or doing something. That's kind of what I've always wanted to do, is be that liaison between the casual Warzone player and the deep hardcore community. So thank you for bringing that up, by the way, Gojj. Yeah. Thank you for having me on, man. Shout out to you guys. You guys have been doing great with your podcast, for real. I've been enjoying every episode I've listened to. Katie, you come unhinged sometimes, and I got to say I love it. I absolutely love it.
You know, sometimes you just got to be a dumbass. You know what I mean?
Yes, but I love it. I do love it, because that used to be when
interesting.
When I used to work with Gojj and we had our little thing, that was literally what I did. I was the person saying the things that probably were a bit, but that just shows passion. We're passionate about what we do, and that's what sets us apart from everybody else in the Warzone community, is that we give a shit.
Yeah, well, seriously, thank you so much for coming on. I know Gojj just said it, but I can't say it enough either. You do really incredible things for the community, both for, as you said, those casual fans who get their information and trust you to provide it to them, and of course for even the casters like us and all of the competitive players. So really, you do some incredible things. So thank you again for coming on.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. The only time I've ever talked to you, Katie, before this is in a Twitch chat of a tournament you're doing whenever you tell me to fix my games. So it was great to meet you and have a conversation. I do appreciate being on. If you guys ever want me on again, just feel free to let me know.
Yes.
Amazing. Well, we really appreciate you, Doug. Hey, chat, that's all we've got. If you didn't know, this has been the Bot Lobby Podcast. If you thought this was just a casual Twitter space for Doug, Katie, and myself, this was actually a podcast recording, Bot Lobby Podcast on YouTube. You can follow Grandmaster Gojj on Twitter for updates, as well as Worlds Bedford on Twitter. That's Katie's handle. And of course, Modern Warzone, our guest today. Follow us all on Twitter. We're always super passionate about Warzone, always talking about Warzone and casting in particular. All three of us, but Katie and I in particular, from the host side of things, we've been casting an insane amount of Warzone. I mean, it has been unbelievable how many Warzone events Katie and I have been able to be a part of, and we feel so blessed to be able to do that, and we're excited to potentially do that for Fortune's Keep. Any closing words, Katie, before we close this one out?
No, you guys are wonderful. This podcast is one of the highlights of my week at this point. Onward and upward. Let's all kick some ass.
Let's do it. Well, thank you
Absolutely.
for everyone tuning in all across all the different social platforms. You guys are amazing. You can find us on all the different audio spaces as well. And hey, this was an emergency episode that went as long as a normal episode. I think we're going to have another one on Wednesday of this week to talk a little bit more about this topic, but also do some more interview style informational pieces around content creators and competitors in the scene. If you've never listened to us before, go back and look at our old VODs. We've interviewed people like FIFA Kill, like Joe Woe, and plenty of others. So go take a look at it. But that's all we've got. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you guys in the next one.